Hi, I'm Avra Lorimer. I'm an EVP at H&K, and I am the Global Client Lead for Walgreens Boots Alliance. It is my absolute pleasure that I'm sitting here today with Emily Mexton, Director of Retail and Merchandising Communications at Walgreens, and also with Lucy Reynolds, Director of Communications and CSR at Boots UK. Nice to see both of you. So we've all heard how retail is a sector that's been suffering throughout the pandemic. And, I've been on the street, I've seen stores that are closed. I'm not going to hugely disagree with that. But you both work for really resilient brands. So I would love to hear your perspective on how retail has been impacted over the past year. And, we're here today. This is sort of our celebration of the Cannes Lions without being in Cannes, but that's okay. So I think also thinking about what's the role of creative communications in supporting and maybe even in saving retail. So with that, I'm just going to dive right in. Question one, from your experience, from your viewpoints, because you're both really on the front line, how has retail changed over the past year? And what is the role of communications in articulating those changes? I will start with Emily.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much, Abra, for having Lucy and I here today. It's exciting to be on the call with Lucy, my counterpart in the UK. So I'm grateful to be here. So I would say from a retail perspective, customer expectations, especially in the pandemic, are higher than they've ever been. We've invested significant resources and allocation of our people and technology into making sure that we get to our customer where and how they want to shop us. I think that's the single most important thing from a retail perspective, from a macro level over the past, call it 18 months. We still know that there's a place for brick and mortar. There is relevancy for that, but how someone shops brick and mortar is likely changing. So, in the beginning of the pandemic, we quickly moved from drive-through pickup options of select essential items to launching partnerships with, major organizations like DoorDash, Postmates, Instacart, Uber Eats. And that's evolved to curbside pickup in as little as 30 minutes and same day delivery in under 2 hours. And so, however our customer wants to shop us, we're there for them. And I think as a communications person that's working on that, it's really important to sort of show the evolution of those partnerships, but also find, that and highlight that safety and speed and convenience that we so traditionally own that narrative. I'd also say that, that human connection over the last 18 months is still incredibly important and prevalent in our organization. We've worked to, present our pharmacists as the frontline experts and essential, thought leadership within the COVID-19 pandemic. I think, pharmacists providing that expertise and that human connection and response and deploying them as spokespeople within communication tactics has been incredibly essential to increasing the narrative of Walgreens and how we're responding to the pandemic, whether that's testing, whether that's vaccine. It's so important for our people to play a helpful role. And I think communications is sort of mirroring that in our tactical recommendation.
I love that. And I love that the evolution has been about tech, but not solely about tech, and that it's also been really human at the same time.
Yeah, I think it has to be both. It has to.
Lucy, what about a Boots perspective from the other side of the Atlantic?
Thanks, Avra, and great to speak with you and Emily today. Just building on what Emily said, of course, it's not new news to anybody that the pandemic has accelerated the shift that we're already seeing to online, and Boots has absolutely benefited from that in terms of our .com. Boots.com has trebled actually sort of over the last 18 months. So incredible growth story for us there. But from a communications perspective, one of the things that I would call out, just building what Emily said, was about giving people access to our people. So something that is really important about Boots to our customers is the advice that we can give and the expertise that we can give. So when they are coming into our stores or they are coming into our pharmacies, they are speaking to a person who is giving them some advice or expertise that they can't get anywhere else. So from a comms perspective, it was really about creating new ways for our customers to access that advice and that expertise. So we've done everything from, as Emily said, putting up our spokespeople. We used our pharmacists to create lots of information, lots of myth busting. We put that out over our social channels. We also saw a huge appetite from earned media for that expert content as well, actually. So around coronavirus itself, but around sort of tangential subjects like flu vaccines. What's the difference between hay fever and COVID symptoms is like one small example of a video that we made with one of our pharmacists that lots of news websites picked up. And actually, I think the WHO at one point used our infographic on the topic. So it was really about finding new ways for people to access that expertise that they're familiar with from Boots. Other things we've done are around our beauty advisors. So people are buying more and more beauty online, but actually beauty is something, makeup, you want to pick it up, you want to look at it, you want to see if it's the right shade, you want to get some advice about what's right for you. So we're offering virtual beauty consultations as well. We've just launched an online doctor service as part of our new Health Hub offering. So from a comms perspective, it's really, I think, one of the things we've done is using communications to give our customers and patients access to our Boots team members and our experts.
I love that. It's us as comms peoples as the door openers. Sort of, you may not be able to come to us, it may not be safe, but we can open the door and we can, in different ways, bring the benefits of the store to you. So I think that's important. You both spoke about how people are accessing and buying in new ways. We know e-commerce absolutely exploded, but I would argue e-commerce can be a little bit anonymous. So I'm just wondering, what does a retailer do? How do you build those connections? How do you build brand preference at a time when maybe it feels like convenience is king and queen and everything is just one super easy click away? Emily, maybe start with you.
Yeah, sure. So for Walgreens, I would say, the traditional definition of convenience was absolutely what Walgreens stood for, right? We were, within 5 miles of 80% of the population. We are virtually on every corner of America. That still is relevant today, and still has a place for the customer. I think over the past, 18 months, we always knew that this sort of evolution of this customer demand was coming and we were working towards it. I think that the pandemic absolutely accelerated what we needed to do from that tech side that you were talking about in terms of that one click away. I'd say that especially in the pandemic, though, what we found is as we're coming out of this and things are starting to open up, people are longing for that personal connection and that personalized expertise. To Lucy's point about the beauty advisors at Boots, Walgreens has a similar, sort of expertise here in the United States. And our beauty consultants can sit down and test and try and play with makeup and cosmetics and skincare with our customers that never have before. It's very hard to get that kind of experience in a virtual landscape when you have the personal opportunity to do so. I'd also say that, when patients are, working on new to therapy or offered a new medication, to have that kind of conversation with a pharmacist of how to use the medication, what are the side effects, and sort of speak a little bit about what, side effects they might have, and have OTC products may be able to assist them with that. There's nothing like that human connection, and our teams in store are so looking forward to our customers coming back into store. Things like Red Nose Day. Yes, we had a digital offering this year, and that may stay for future years, but there's nothing like that opportunity to sell that red nose and raise that money for children living in poverty that rallies our team members in store and get them really excited to see their customers and raise funds. I think that human connection we have cannot be replaced. We just have to add on top of that solutions that also get to you when you need those technology offerings, the pickup, curbside pickup in as little as 30 minutes certainly drive that kind of opportunity to get the best of physical and digital all in one space.
I think that's probably part of the answer, right? You can't really be just one. It has to be both.
Correct. Yeah. And you see some of the competitors that are in the digital space starting to get into brick and mortar because they see value in that. And they are somewhat of a supply chain opportunity, right? 8,000, 9,000 stores are somewhat of a distribution center in itself.
Yeah, the stores are an amazing asset. So, Lucy, what is your take in terms of what does it take today to build brand preference?
Well, it's a really great question, Avra. How do you stand out when everyone's got a website and there's multiple places that you can get the same thing? And I think one of the things that's been really interesting for Boots in particular, and I know Walgreens has done the same thing, is that over the last 18 months, we have really lent into the national conversation. So it is a really tough time for retail at the moment. It's a tough time for the economy. It's tough for everybody. That could be a time to put your head below the parapet, to be a bit quiet. But actually, I think that the opposite is true. And we have seen that really work for us. We've really got involved with some big national initiatives. The first one was testing, and Walgreens have done the same thing. We got involved with COVID testing, supporting the NHS on that front really early in the pandemic. But what we did is we spoke about that. Some of the comms that we put out was a bit rough and ready. We kind of shot it ourselves. Sometimes it was shot on phones. Our team members were posting, really galvanised our team members. They were sharing videos across all channels. We've now got just launching a Boots TikTok channel, but really following the fact that all of our team members were posting on TikToks, posting their TikToks during the pandemic. So vaccinations, we're involved with a vaccination program across several of our stores throughout the country. In the same way that Walgreens supported Red Nose Day, we've done a lot of support for our charity partners, in particular the Hygiene Bank. And we've really spoken about it. So I think this is the difference. We've really been very proactive in talking about our actions with media, absolutely, with earned media, but also across our own channels. We've been very open with our customers about communicating our role in the pandemic. We've been very open with them about our stores, some of the safety measures that we've put in place. We've been very open about what we can't do as well. And that has really worked for us. In fact, our brand reputation and our brand recommend and advocacy scores are the highest they've ever been over the last year. And I really think that is partly due to the fact that we have put our heads above the parapet and we have lent into the national conversation and to the topics that everybody around us is speaking about. So for another communicator working in retail, that would be my advice.
Love that. And I also love the fact that you had the confidence to say it might be tough, but actually we're going to add more value by being out there and by communicating than by retreating in. The other interesting thing is you used a term that I love, which is rough and ready. And I actually think that the confidence to put out honest content, right? Something that hasn't been through 5 rounds of tested and isn't perfectly glossy, but is really honest about your retail experience and your team members, I think really creates a huge amount of connection. So I'm not surprised that you've experienced a surge in reputational scores. I think my final question is going to be about inclusivity. And it has been a year where there's been a really positive surge of interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm wondering, from a retail perspective, how do you show people that you really are genuinely inclusive and that everyone is welcome? How do you approach that? And maybe, Lucy, starting off with you and the Boots approach.
Wow, yeah, great question. And obviously, as you said, it has been a year like no other for conversations around DE&I, which is a fantastic thing. Absolutely. I think the phrase that I use with the team is definitely, if you're going to talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk, particularly on this subject. So We have been very careful not to make statements or communicate things that we're not doing, and just kind of, general statements about having a DE&I plan in place, or certain actions that we would like to take, or ambitions. But we've tried to take action as well as talking about it. So some examples that will give you are the way that we have been casting for our adverts. Actually, we've always tried to be very diverse in our casting across all of our communications. We've recently launched a new campaign, and some are already, so hopefully some of you in the UK will be seeing that everywhere over the next few weeks. We actually had around 35 different actors that took part in that campaign. They were street cast, they're real people. For Boots, it's important that we reflect all of society. We are as mass a brand as you can get. We're a cradle to grave brand. We're a national brand. We've got over 2,000 stores right across the UK. Everybody lives within a 5-minute, 95% of the population lives within a 5-minute drive of a Boots. So it's very, very, not only is it the right thing to do, but we are reflecting the communities that we serve and the customers that we serve. So it's very, very important that, as well as talking about diversity, we show that we're being diverse as well. So, hopefully we are living up to that.
I love that you're walking the talk, and I found it really powerful that you said you did the street casting. You had over 30 different actors, because it does matter when you see somebody in a Boots ad or Walgreens ad and you go, yeah, they do look like me, or it sends a really important message. So, Emily, how is Walgreens handling inclusivity?
Yeah, I would say, similarly to what Lucy was mentioning, I think representation absolutely matters. And I think as an organization, right, we're making strides in this regard, and we're pushing for even more representation. But specifically for comms folks, I think it's important to understand that representation matters across our platform as well. So whether that's spokespeople, that's influencers, that's media we reach out to, how do we diversify that portfolio so that we're not only representing the country in which we live and work and play in, but also the solve that we're trying to get to. So, COVID-19 vaccinations is a great example. We were charged to get America vaccinated. And I would say that we know that, disproportionately Black and brown individuals here in the United States have been disproportionately affected by COVID. And so the pharmacy communications team really took that as a charge to say, how do we speak to this community and make sure that they understand, and encourage them to get vaccinated. And so as you look across that plan, working with John Legend, who is an incredible advocate in that space and a member of that community, and is an advocate for, getting the vaccine, working with him on the This Is Our Shot campaign was incredibly important to get that message out, to make sure that everyone felt included. And the visuals in that campaign, the marketing and communications team that worked on that, unbelievable work, like gut-wrenching, sort of conversations that he was having. He sat down with one of our pharmacists, who is also African American, and spoke about how this has impacted the community. What are they looking forward to getting back to most? That authentic conversation went further than any sort of, company branded message we could ever put out. And so I think as we look at, representation does matter, and looking at the subset of percentage of not just, USH and Black and white and Asian Americans as our influencers, but also looking at abled and disabled and differently abled individuals. And how do you make sure that representation is fully pulled through? It's something I'm, Avra, as you know, very passionate about and push the team incredibly hard on, because I don't want ever for there to be a moment where someone says, oh, Walgreens isn't for me, because we are accessible. We are a place that we want you to come and feel supported in whatever you're going through, whether that's you have a new medication you're trying out, or maybe you're just getting into makeup, and we want you to have a beauty consultant you can come speak to. I know, Avra, you and I've talked about we have, some of our beauty consultants are members of the trans community. And so how are they able to educate others on not only the ways to get into that community or feel comfortable in that community? And how do we amplify that through our own storytelling and spokespeople opportunity? There's no organization that gets it right 100% of the time, but Walgreens and Boots are committed to, making strides in this regard and making sure that representation is top of mind for us always, and pushing the team to do that in our retail work.
You were talking about different ways of showing inclusivity in different areas of it. And Emily, you and I were once on a call where a colleague of mine who doesn't have the use of her two arms mentioned that actually she lives in New York City. There are different options for her, but she chooses to shop at a Walgreens. And she talked about how the staff goes out of their way to help her. And at that moment, I remember feeling so proud that I worked with a company like Walgreens that went out of their way to make all shoppers feel included. So.
Yeah, and I would say that, we get our inspiration at Comms based on what the operations team is doing, right? They obviously picked the store format. They made sure that, it was able to be accessible to the community. We then thrive off of that and look at how can we, what are the communications ways in which representation comes to life? How do we make people feel comfortable, but using communications tactics is one of the passion points and an excitement in being in comms, is you have that ability to pick the influencers and work with them and tell the why. We worked with an influencer that had cerebral palsy, and how did she use same day delivery and curbside pickup during the pandemic, because she was not only concerned about getting COVID, but also getting in and out of the store quickly and safely was a concern of hers. And so how did she use those services? So as we develop more services and communicate those, we've got to keep the representation and how that can be perceived by others top of mind and in the forefront of our tactics.
I think that's a perfect place to end, because what you've been talking about is using comms as a force for good, and how comms as a force for good can also help retail reimagine and reinvent itself after a really tough year. I've had the opportunity to work with both of you. The one thing I know about you is that you are insanely busy. So the fact that you took the time for this conversation and for other people to gain the benefit of your perspective as we all think about the retail sector, I'm so appreciative. So thank you so much for the time and for your insights and views.
Thank you. Thank you, Avra.
Thank you, Avra. Thanks, Emily.
Nice to see you, Lucy.